Sir John Major has become the most senior politician to give evidence at the ongoing infected blood inquiry. But the former Prime Minister's evidence has been criticised by campaigners after he said victims of the scandal had had incredibly bad luck. Around 3,000 people died after becoming infected with HIV or hepatitis C through infected blood products imported from the US in the 1970s and 80s. Ivor Bennett reports.
Morning. Victims have waited decades for this day to see a former Prime Minister questioned over the government's response to the infected blood scandal.
The evidence I shall give
shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
But far from any apology or admission of guilt, there was instead a comment seen as offensive. Sir John Major describing what happened as bad luck.
There's no amount of compensation you can give that could actually compensate for what had happened to them. What had happened to them was incredibly bad luck.
It prompted gasps from those listening and outrage.
Bad luck is when you trip over a paving stone and break your leg or something. Bad luck isn't when you say to somebody, "Oh, bad luck, you've been given a potentially life-threatening virus." That's not bad luck.
Rosemary's son Nicky was infected with HIV before he was 10 while receiving treatment for haemophilia. He died aged just 25.
I try not to be angry and I try not to be bitter. It's very difficult. We want people to just stand up and say, we did wrong.
No government has taken responsibility for the scandal, and it was the same again today. Sir John Major defending the decision of Margaret Thatcher's cabinet and his own not to award compensation.
Everyone in this room can think of a dozen things where you could argue someone has a moral obligation to do something. And the government has to keep control of events and keep control of the sum total of its expenditure.
Throughout his evidence, Sir John Major was at pains to say the government was not unsympathetic to victims and that the decision against compensation was purely practical to avoid setting a potentially costly precedent. But it's an argument victims simply aren't buying.
What he believes is that there was no liability at the time, but he never investigated it, and his government never investigated it, or if they did, they didn't tell anyone what the outcome of that investigation was. So yes, the victims firmly believe there was a cover-up.
The inquiry is expected to conclude later this year, 3 years after it began. As their numbers continue to dwindle, victims and their families hope it will finally bring justice before it's too late. Ivor Bennett, Sky News.